Once football ended, the road led to Marblehead, Massachusetts, which was where my husband was from. And he started his own business, managing the careers and finances of professional football players, and I settled into being a stay-at-home mom for my 2 children. But of course, their schools were always broke. Nothing ever changes, right? Their sports teams never had enough money or enough equipment, and the church was always doing a stewardship drive. So I raised money for classrooms to have computers, children to have uniforms and equipment, and funds so that the pastor could feed his family. I also raised money at that time for the ABC program, A Better Chance, that allowed us to provide talented inner-city children experiences that would give them exposure and provide advantages for their lives. During that time, it was extremely rewarding to believe that while making a contribution as a wife and a mother, I could also make a contribution to my community and do that while I was able to stay at home. Throughout my time as a volunteer fundraiser staying at home, I learned to identify projects that would resonate with the community, and I learned to build a case for support. I also learned that it's essential to personally identify with the merits of the projects that you're asking to raise money for. And if you believe in the merits of the project, you can go forward asking boldly and expectantly that people will want to support you. This time also cemented my belief that people appreciate the opportunity to share and the opportunity to know that they're making a difference in the lives of people in their communities. That was the 5th rung of my ladder. When I was 34, Tom and I planned a family road trip across the country to begin a new life in San Diego, California. Fully aware of how I felt when my parents made these types of decisions for my life, we planned a 2-week trip of vacationing in some really cool places across the country so it wouldn't feel like Polly and Ryan were losing quite so much. However, 10 days before the move, with our house sold and our bags packed, my husband Tom was diagnosed as being terminally ill with cancer, colon cancer. And so instead of a road trip, I put my children and my dog on a plane to Idaho to be with my parents, and Tom and I got on a plane to San Diego to try to figure out what this journey would mean. The move happened by airplane, and it forever changed our lives. Suddenly, I was running Tom's business in sports management, doing finance negotiations for professional athlete contracts, overseeing limited partnerships, and with dealing with the media on a routine basis. All things that I was absolutely totally unequipped to do. But you kind of make it happen when you have to. And I was learning more about healthcare than I had ever hoped to learn. I learned about surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, and even experimental therapy as my husband and I went to Washington, D.C., and he participated in therapy at the National Institute of Health. I distinctly remember telling my husband on more than one occasion that I was going to have the privilege of dying before he did. It would be a heart attack brought on by dealing with the insurance companies. In order to keep my children's lives as normal as possible during Tom's illness, I spent a great deal of time working within their schools, primarily to make certain that they always knew that they were a priority in the midst of all of our trials. Again, as a volunteer, I served on the school district board. I rallied other parents to help me with fundraisers, wrote grants to build libraries, ultimately created a foundation for the high school, and raised the funds to build a football field that became the sports home for 5 future NFL players. During this time, my commitment, while it was volunteer, came with tremendous expectations of success as the school district was counting on the deliverables. That was the 6th rung of my ladder. When Tom passed away, our family established a foundation in his honor. The purpose of the foundation was to provide athletic equipment for young athletes who didn't have the means for the things that would help them to be competitive. Tom grew up in an extremely poor family of 10 children, and each of his 8 brothers went to college on full-ride athletic scholarships. So this particular scholarship became meaningful to our entire family, including our extended family. As we collectively received applications and selected the beneficiaries of the foundation, it became very symbolic and served to cement in my children's lives just who their father was and how he had overcome his obstacles by using his God-given talents combined with determination. My son Ryan's junior high school was the first applicant. Struggling to keep their athletic programs alive, they requested funds for basketball uniforms. The award that we gave created a moment of tremendous pride for my son. Over time, the foundation served as a vehicle for healing as we helped to fulfill the mission of the foundation. And the experience has enriched my personal belief that philanthropy is at the heart of human greatness. That was the 7th rung on my ladder. 1 year after Tom passed, with his business closed, my daughter a senior in high school and headed off to college, I suddenly realized that I needed to figure out how I was going to support both Polly and Ryan's educations and then support myself for the remainder of my life. I was never so frightened. My whole identity was being a wife and a mother. I had never worked, or so I thought, and I was not able to self-identify any qualities that would translate into earning a living. I couldn't even imagine where to begin. This chapter in my life left me with broken rungs on my ladder, and I was going to have to straddle the next couple of spaces to get back. When my daughter left for her 2nd year in college, my son Ryan and I went on a road trip. We went back to Idaho to visit my family, and there it was I realized that I had support systems that I needed to draw on to help me climb to the next rung of my ladder. So we left sunny Southern California and headed back to the Rocky Mountains. While Ryan attended high school, I invoked the help of my parents, straddled the 8th rung of the ladder, and I returned to college for an advanced degree. By heading back to school, I was still faced with a void of focus. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't have a sense of what I was good at. I had been doing fundraising for 28 years, but I never felt that I had chose it. More, I felt that it had chosen me. It was a repeated calling to meet some unmet need. It was, as best I could tell, I would always be a volunteer and have extremely limited career opportunities without a degree to substantiate my worth, and that was never going to be good enough for me. I purchased and began to peruse the university catalog in hot pursuit of courses of study that would, with the hope of having something jump off the page and help me identify a plan for my future. And lo and behold, I found it. It was called Organizational Communications. As I read the course descriptions, I was actually shocked to see that I could get an education doing what I had been doing for my entire life. So it gave me focus that I had never had before. It was a lifetime awakening, and it forever changed my destiny. I can never begin to tell you all the ways my selection of an advanced educational path has impacted my forward movement of my career every single day. I took valuable classes including rhetoric, interpersonal communications, conflict management, persuasion, creative writing, marketing, and leadership. These are courses that taught me the tools for presenting cases and influencing decisions, and that's the business that I'm in. They taught me to understand my audiences, to create appropriate messages, to purposely build meaningful relationships, and to lead with respect, all those who I would count on to help me succeed in my future. They more than prepared me for my professional career. They gave me not only focus, but also passion and confidence that I had the tools to be successful. Just a little factoid that's kind of fun. My daughter and I both graduated from college, and my son graduated from high school in the same spring. I had to take 21 credits a semester to make that happen, and I was proud of myself till I realized my daughter was getting a master's degree in 4 years. So I was pretty proud of her too. And then there was Ryan, who, and I had to bribe the high school principal to let him out of school because he spent too many days skiing. Yeah, but it worked because they didn't really want him there for another year. So I must add in here that while I was in school, I learned that getting paid to do a job does not create your worth or mean that you're more skilled. My two new credentials validated the work I'd been doing for years, enhanced my awareness of my God-given talent, and gave me a sense of purpose, and that was the 9th rung of my ladder. While studying, I worked in the development office at the university, a designated health science campus, and I helped to launch the first ever $150 million capital campaign. During my tenure there, it became clear that the opportunities would be greater and the impact of my life more significant with my new education. I set out to test my skills while I was in the safe environment of my academic institution. And with the support from the leadership there, I was able to develop a program called Dollars for Scholars to give money to unfortunate children who would be the first ones to graduate from college and their families. I was also able to establish a career development center. And when I was doing that, I noticed that just about every job listed required an advanced degree. I also launched an international student program. During my tenure of establishing the Career Development Center, quite ironically, I helped students to figure out their career paths. Who would have thought? I helped them to identify their transferable skills and to hone their interviewing skills and write their resumes. For this, I received free tuition and a whopping $28,000 a year. But it was my first job, and every time I got a paycheck, I really was pretty sure I was really rich, for a short period of time anyway. Then all of a sudden I realized that my lifestyle was such that this was a vow of poverty, and while education was rewarding, it was never quite going to cut it. Because of my previous dealings with my husband's illness, healthcare became a priority for me, and I had been invited as a result to serve on the Hospital Foundation's board of directors. In that situation, I was able to speak quite authentically about the need for support, and because of that, I was able to help the foundation of the hospital raise significant funds. I was also able to successfully align the hospital with the career paths that were being offered to students at the university through the Career Development Center. My knowledge of the healthcare workforce was substantial as a result of this experience, and it was my volunteer role as a foundation trustee at the hospital that I was recognized for my potential value and successfully launched my official development career only in 2002. And that was the 10th rung of my ladder. With Polly off to college and in Chicago with a new career as an occupational therapist, an ordained Presbyterian pastor, and an Emmy Award-winning talk show host. Do I sound proud? Just a little bit. And Ryan out of college, trying to find himself, like mother, like son. I was shocked that a search firm would call me and think that I had the skills to fill a position. But at the age of 50, I found myself needing to make certain that I had the ability to demonstrate that my years of volunteer work combined with my new education had prepared me for a formal position as a leader and an executive director of a foundation. It was at this juncture that I actually had to use the skills I had taught the students in the Career Development Center: how to interview, how to identify transferable skills, and write a resume. And this was an example how one rung of the ladder leads to another. As history wrote itself, I jumped into my car with my 2 yellow labs and my cat, followed by my brother-in-law with a U-Haul and all my earthly possessions, and headed off to Oregon to become the executive director of the Foundation for Providence Health and Services for Southern Oregon and Northern California. This organization is the 4th largest not-for-profit healthcare provider in the country with a 150-year legacy of development. In this position, I was able to grow my knowledge and hone my skills with some of the best professional development people in the country. I served on the administrative team of the medical center. I learned all kinds of things like how corporate operations work, how human resources work, how owned physician practices work, the importance of quality, and the value of leadership. I learned about stewardship, messaging, and relationship building, board development, and project management. I learned about the importance of a diverse workforce, the complexities of healthcare and healthcare reform, and endless other professional topics. And I learned about the inherent value of connectedness in all of these parts to the greater whole. Most importantly, again, I learned the significance of the role that philanthropy plays in connecting people to a community resource in such a way that everyone mutually benefits for the greater good of the organization and the community that it was built to serve. That was the 11th rung on my ladder. While in Oregon, my life again hit a stop sign when I received a shocking phone call that my son, at that point in time a very successful international model, had been found dead from an unknown cause. The healing process for my family at that point in time began when we were planning his funeral, and we needed to identify a charitable beneficiary for the memorial gifts. My son, who I'm extremely proud of, had spent his entire life from the time he was a small child caring for those who were homeless. So it was fitting that we selected the Monarch School for Homeless Children in San Diego, the place of his funeral and the place where he was buried beside his father. Our friends and family have continued to support this school on birthdays and special occasions of Ryan's life. To date, the school has received over $3 million in my son's memory, and my daughter and I have the blessing of knowing that he has a legacy in his short 26 years of life. Again, my belief that philanthropy is at the heart of human greatness. This time I have to admit I fell off the ladder, and I was off the ladder for quite some time. But as life would have it, I had to learn to get back on, and I had to struggle to reach the height where I had been when I fell off.